This untamed hillside offers endless raw timber, but demands immense physical labor to yield a shelter. Today, one builder starts transforming these freshly felled trees into a permanent off-grid cabin. Stripping the bark is the critical first defense against rapid decay and wood-boring pests. Green wood still holds its natural moisture, making it significantly softer and easier to hew than fully seasoned lumber. Using a hand sander and a sharp axe, the craftsman shapes the heavy logs to expose the dense, resilient heartwood beneath. Every beam requires exact attention to its natural taper. Planing the heavy posts until the surface is uniform prepares them for structural joinery. Smooth timber sheds rainwater rapidly, whereas rough fibers absorb moisture like a sponge. This foundational effort dictates the lifespan of the entire build. Stacking the processed timber keeps it elevated and safely away from the damp earth. Direct ground contact is the primary cause of premature rot in structural logs. As dusk sets in, a simple campfire provides heat and a means to cook. This sustains the high caloric burn demanded by continuous hand-tool carpentry. By the next morning, the meticulous work of truing the rough lumber resumes. A hand plane shears off microlayers of wood fiber, creating a completely flat reference face. This perfectly flat surface is non-negotiable for cutting tight, load-bearing joints later on. Accuracy at this early stage prevents catastrophic alignment failures down the line. Working with the natural grain instead of fighting, it saves both the blade and the builder's shoulders. The steady rhythm of the hand plane becomes a constant metronome in the clearing. Shaping a massive beam with an axe requires reading the tension in the wood grain. Striking parallel to the fibers splits the timber cleanly, removing large chunks of waste material with minimal effort. Once the rough profile is established, the hand plane refines the uneven surface. Gathering dry brush and debris from the site clears the immediate workspace. A tidy site is safer. It also reveals the natural contours of the land where the foundation will sit. The reddish forest soil is dense and dry, providing excellent natural compaction for the footings. Mixing dry cement powder with the excavated dirt creates an improvised but highly durable concrete matrix. Planting the thick wooden posts deep into these holes anchors the entire structure below the frost line. A rigid base prevents the cabin from settling unevenly over time. Pouring wet concrete around the base of the posts locks the timber permanently into the earth. The wet aggregate cures into a solid anchor. It also creates a protective barrier that shields the buried wood from soil moisture. The primary skeleton relies on mechanical connections. Carving deep notches into the vertical posts creates a secure saddle for the horizontal crossbeams. These traditional joints rely on exact physical fit rather than just the sheer strength of metal fasteners. A tight joint distributes downward compressive forces directly through the vertical wood fibers. Using a chisel and mallet allows for pinpoint accuracy when removing the final millimeters of waste wood. As the heavy horizontal beams are lifted into place, the structural grid begins to take shape. Nailing the planks directly into the carved notches prevents the framework from twisting under its own weight. Every swing of the hammer locks the geometry. The elevated base isolates the future living space from ground-level humidity and seasonal flooding. It is a calculated defense against the jungle environment. Driving nails into the structural beams secures the outer perimeter of the floor frame. To stop the tall vertical posts from swaying, diagonal braces are added across the corners. Triangles form the strongest shape in timber architecture. They lock the vertical elements, transferring lateral wind loads safely down into the foundation. Without these rigid braces, the tall frame would eventually rack and collapse. Hoisting the heavy upper poles into the notched joints requires careful balance and leverage. The builder relies on the pre-cut angles to hold the timber in place while it is secured. Checking the alignment with a spirit level ensures the walls will rise perfectly plumb. Gravity does the heavy holding. The nails simply keep the beams from shifting. Securing the angled upper crossbeams ties the opposing walls together. Standing directly on the elevated frame allows the craftsman to leverage his body weight while hammering the highest joints. This upper ring of timber creates the top plate, which will eventually carry the entire load of the roof. The complex network of vertical and horizontal timber now forms a completely self-supporting cube. Shaping additional beams on the ground requires the heavy swinging force of the axe. Hewing a round log into a square beam removes the sapwood, which rots quickly. It leaves behind only the most durable structural core. The thick carpet of wood shavings on the forest floor is a visual record of the massive physical effort. The raw volume of removed wood is staggering. Measuring the spans precisely is critical before cutting the floor joists. Even a slight miscalculation here would cause the entire floor system to sag or bow. The light-colored shavings blanket the clearing. They act as a natural mulch, suppressing muddy conditions around the active workspace while returning organic material to the topsoil. Working at elevation increases the physical stakes. Hammering the upper roof joints locks the top plate, preventing the heavy walls from bowing outward under the future weight of the metal roofing. The framework must be completely rigid. A natural Y-shaped branch acts as a perfect structural saddle. It cradles the roof pole securely. Securing the upper rafters dictates the pitch of the roof. A steep pitch is vital in dense forests to quickly shed heavy rain and falling debris. Guiding the long wooden roof poles into position completes the upper canopy of the skeleton. With the roof structure stabilized, attention shifts down to the floor system. Using a hand plane on the heavy floorboards removes splinters and uneven ridges. A smooth floor is easier to sweep and maintain. Cutting the planks to exact lengths ensures they rest perfectly across the center line of the joists. If a board ends freely in the air, it will bend and crack underfoot traffic. The makeshift sawhorses provide a stable, ergonomic workstation. This prevents back strain during hours of repetitive planing. Laying the light-colored planks side by side immediately transforms the open grid into a walkable surface. The interior space is finally defined. The elevated deck creates a physical boundary between the living area and the wild forest floor. Stepping back allows the builder to assess the structure's scale. The cabin sits naturally among the tall, slender tree trunks. The surrounding canopy remains undisturbed. Building quietly by hand ensures the local wildlife quickly accepts the new wooden structure as part of the natural landscape. Carrying the long planks over the muddy ground demands careful foot. Every single floorboard passes under the iron blade. The hand plane squares the edges of each plank. Squaring the edges ensures they sit flush against one another. Tight seams prevent cold drafts from pulling up through the floorboards at night. Marking the cuts with a metal square guarantees a perfect 90-degree angle. The hand saw leaves a clean, precise edge that drops seamlessly into the floor pattern. As the final boards are coaxed into place, the interior platform becomes a solid, unified deck. The smooth surface is a stark contrast to the rugged bark of the structural pillars. Marking the exact location of the vertical wall studs ensures the future cladding will have solid backing. Driving nails through the edge of the floor planks anchors them permanently to the heavy joists below. This secures the walking surface. Laying thick cardboard across the finished wood protects the smooth planks from dropped tools and heavy boots during the next chaotic phases of construction. With the base protected, additional vertical posts are installed. These secondary pillars will frame the doorways and windows. The repetitive hammering creates a rigid tension throughout the entire lower platform. The floor is now ready to support the walls. Fastening the structural beams to the cross-shaped joints distributes the weight of the walls evenly across the floor, placing the base plank perfectly. Level guarantees that the vertical studs will stand straight. Even a minor angle at the base would magnify into a serious lean by the roofline. Locking the lower perimeter with heavy nails ties the base plates directly into the main support pillars. This interlocking strategy ensures the cabin moves as one solid unit if the ground ever shifts. The platform is heavily fortified. It acts as a giant structural diaphragm that resists twisting forces from the wind. Aligning the thick planks flush against the outer posts creates a seamless boundary for the exterior walls. Heavy blows drive the steel nails deep into the grain, clamping the wood fibers tightly together permanently. Carving a curved notch with a sharp knife allows the wood to wrap seamlessly around the round posts. Custom fitting each intersection is time-consuming, but it seals out drafts and crawling insects. The shaped plank slips perfectly around the pillar. Hewing a fresh log with the axe removes the heavy, waterlogged outer sapwood. Cross-cutting the thick logs to length with a handsaw requires steady, rhythmic strokes. The saw teeth clear sawdust out of the deep kerf on every single pull. Splitting the timber along its grain lines rapidly yields flat, workable wall panels. Using a chisel and wooden mallet shears away precise flakes of wood. The mallet provides the raw driving force, while the beveled chisel edge controls the depth of the cut. Smoothing the freshly split beams with a hand plane reveals the bright, clean grain. A flat surface is essential for stacking the logs flush. Sawing small, wooden blocks on a resting log provides custom shims and locking pegs for the joints. Every piece is customized on the spot. The chisel is positioned perfectly to pare down the edges. Chiseling out the internal mortises creates a recessed socket for the wall studs. Stacking the prepared pieces organizes the workspace for rapid assembly. Connecting the upper wall frames requires teamwork. One builder holds the heavy lumber perfectly still, while the other drives the nails to lock the joint. This defines the height of the room. Scoring the wood with a knife prevents the grain from tearing when the saw or axe bites into the line. The cut remains incredibly clean. Planing the roof supports ensures the future metal sheets will lay perfectly flat against the wood. Any raised bumps would create pressure points that could puncture the thin metal roofing over time. The beams slide smoothly into the upper frame. Driving nails into the highest peak of the roof finally connects the two opposing sides of the... Working from the ladder requires constant balance. The craftsman ties the central ridge beam into the rafters. The ridge beam acts as the structural spine of the roof. Nailing the final vertical studs onto the floor prepares the skeleton for the exterior claddings. These studs provide the vital nailing surface that will hold the heavy log walls securely in place. Laying the prepared planks on the floor keeps the materials within easy reach. The tall, gabled roof profile is now fully visible. The steep angle is designed to shed water instantly. Smoothing the rectangular wall beams removes the rough saw marks. The planed surface will face the interior of the cabin, giving the walls a refined, finished texture. Lifting the heavy timber away from the sawhorses keeps the milling area clear for the next batch. Carrying bundles of prepared wood directly into the cabin streamlines the installation process. Hammering the vertical pillars securely to the horizontal floor plates ensures the walls will not shift outward when the heavy cladding is applied. Crouching near the floor, the builder checks the lower joints. The blue tarp protects the timber from sudden rain showers. The clean planed surface of the vertical stud highlights the precision of the hand-hewn lumber. Using a yellow spirit level guarantees the horizontal crossbeams are perfectly parallel to the floor. If the base beams are uneven, every subsequent layer of the wall will be crooked. Looking up through the sturdy roof rafters reveals the complex geometry of the canopy. The overlapping beams distribute the massive weight of the roof. Working at the peak, the builder locks the final ridge connections. Down below, cross-cutting a thick log into small segments provides the raw material for the stacked log walls. The short segments are easier to handle and stack. Shaping the wood with a heavy machete allows for rapid, aggressive material removal. The blade acts as both an axe and a draw knife. Sawing the logs into identical lengths creates modular building blocks for the lower wall sections. Carrying the bundles of short logs inside prepares the floor for the repetitive stacking phase. The interior is completely cleared out to make room for the massive volume of wall timber. Stacking the small log segments horizontally rapidly builds up a thick, impenetrable lower wall. The dense wood provides excellent thermal mass. The stacked logs create a highly textured rustic barrier. Their sheer weight holds them firmly in place. Holding a perfectly planed, smooth wooden board signals the transition to the upper wall cladding. The smooth boards will seal the upper sections of the cabin, blocking out the wind while keeping the structure relatively lightweight. Installing the wide wooden planks across the studs immediately encloses the room. The overlapping edges block horizontal rain. Cutting each plank to exact length with a handsaw requires a steady arm to keep the cut perfectly square. Splitting a log segment with the axe creates a flat ear face that rests flat interior face that's flush against the frame. Sawing through the dense grain generates friction and heat, sending sawdust flying into the air. Installing the wide boards onto the framework rapidly transforms the open skeleton into a solid shell. The thick wood provides immediate shelter from the wind. Planing the next batch of wooden planks on the workbench ensures a tight, gap-free fit against the adjacent boards. Consistency is key for a weather-tight seal. the sharp iron blade of the hand plane shears off thin, continuous ribbons of wood. This process removes the porous outer fibers, leaving a dense, polished surface that naturally repels water. Mounting the planks onto the upper walls seals the gap just below the roof rafters. This area is highly vulnerable to wind-driven rain. Pressing the planks tightly together before nailing them eliminates any micro-gaps that could let in insects. The enclosed cabin is now significantly darker and warmer. The final wooden plank at the very peak of the wall locks the entire cladding system together. Trim to seal the exposed end grain. End grain acts like a cluster of tiny straws, absorbing ambient moisture rapidly if left exposed. Driving a small wooden peg into a drilled hole creates a fastener that will The rhythmic cutting shapes the final trim pieces. Splitting the wood on a heavy stump transfers the massive force of the axe blow safely into the earth. The cabin structure sits squarely in the clearing, a stark geometric shape against the chaotic jungle. Planing the long boards prepares the interior walls. Carrying the smoothed beam inside begins the process of sealing the inner perimeter. Fitting a rounded log perfectly into the notched vertical post requires carving a matching concave profile. The tight fit relies entirely on exact geometry. Slipping the log into place builds out the thick lower wall. The heavy timber acts as insulation, slowing heat transfer. Using the handsaw and axe to shape, the next piece maintains the momentum. Planing the interior face of the log wall softens the rugged texture into a comfortable living surface. The heavy wooden corner braces anchor the top of the log walls directly to the sloping roof rafters. This triangulated connections stops the tall walls from pushing outward under the heavy weight of the roof. Without these structural ties, the cabin could slowly splay apart. Sawing the log over a solid stump prevents the timber from bouncing and binding the saw blade. The sharp teeth tear through the cross grain, sending heavy sawdust flying onto the forest floor. Approaching the nearly complete cabin reveals the solid, impenetrable nature of the log walls. The roof structure sits ready for its metal skin. Installing thin wooden slats on the interior covers the gaps between the heavy structural logs. This double-layer approach traps a pocket of dead air inside the wall cavity, significantly boosting thermal insulation. Fitting the final logs into the upper wall sections seals the remaining triangular openings near the rafters. The room is now a fully defensive space. Lifting the heavy timber into the highest gaps requires brute strength and careful balance. The logs drop securely into their carved channels. Climbing the ladder provides access to the exposed roof framing. Securing the upper horizontal purlins across the rafters creates the grid that will support the metal roofing. These beams must be perfectly parallel, so the rigid metal sheets can lay completely flat. The red corrugated metal sheets offer instant, absolute waterproofing. Their wavy profile makes the thin steel incredibly rigid and channels heavy rainwater efficiently off the pitch. Laying the sheets perfectly straight is vital. Driving screws with a power drill anchors the metal panels securely to the wooden purlins. The rubber washers on the screws seal the holes against leaks. Trimming the overhanging edge of the thick porch floorboard creates a clean, flush perimeter. The sharp saw blade bites through the raw timber easily. Clearing the tall brush around the cabin with a scythe pushes back the encroaching jungle. Carrying the vegetation away removes habitats for pests and creates a defensible firebreak around the home. Inspecting the grain of the freshly cut logs determines the best angle for shaping. Marking a straight chalk line along the uneven timber provides a perfect reference for the hand axe. Hewing the log to a flat plane requires striking exactly to the line. Pulling down the heavy vines from the steep hillside opens up the canopy and allows sunlight to reach the cabin. The hand axe chips away the thick wood with aggressive, measured strikes. Burning the large pile of cleared dry brush safely disposes of the organic debris. The fire turns the waste into nutrient-rich ash, leaving the hillside bare, clean, and open. creating a functional door requires perfectly square lumber. The hand plane glides over the long timber beam, curling off long, continuous shavings. This reduces the wood to an exact, uniform thickness. Any warp or bow left in these frame pieces would cause the finished door to stick or fail to latch. Working the edges until they are perfectly flat guarantees the joints will mate seamlessly. Inspecting the finished beam confirms it is completely true. Using a hand axe to trim the ends of the beam shapes the tenons that will lock into the corners. Splitting away, the waste wood leaves a rough peg. The large handsaw cuts a deep notch into the receiving beam. This creates the mortise joint. Driving nails through the corners of the assembled frame clamps the mortise and tenon joints permanently together. The frame must remain perfectly square during this step. If the angles shift even slightly, the door will drag against the floor. Carrying the completed framework across the clearing tests its rigidity. Trimming small wedges of wood with the axe provides custom shims to reinforce the joints. Fitting the internal cross braces into the frame prevents the heavy door from sagging out of square over time. The lightweight skeleton is now ready for its solid paneling. Fitting the thin wooden slats into the door frame creates a solid, continuous panel. The slats are nailed tightly side by side, allowing the wood to expand and contract naturally without splitting the rigid outer frame. This technique balances privacy with structural stability. Sanding the fully assembled door removes any uneven lips between the slats and the frame. A smooth finish prevents splinters and helps the door shed blowing rain. The clean, light-colored wood shows the precision of the fit. Holding the heavy door upright verifies its balance before taking it to the cabin. Hanging the door on its hinges is the final step of enclosure. The door swings into the heavy frame. Trimming the edges slightly with a hand axe relieves tight spots and ensures a frictionless close. Standing on the finished porch, the builder assesses the completely sealed structure. Splitting a small block of dense wood creates a durable wedge for the custom latch. Planing the wooden mechanism smooth ensures the sliding parts won't bind from friction. A handmade latch relies purely on wooden geometry rather than delicate metal springs that can rust. Carrying a fresh bundle of slats to the porch begins the finishing work for the exterior trims. The cabin is fully operational. Shaving the bark off a vertical log with a hatchet prepares it to serve as a rustic porch pillar. Using the hand plane on the horizontal beams creates perfectly smooth lumber for the window casings. The finished door and swept porch highlight the tight construction. Kneeling on the deck, the builder cuts the window trim to exact lengths. The handsaw requires long, smooth strokes to leave a clean edge that will sit flush against the log walls. Sliding the fully assembled wooden window insert into the rough log opening seals the gap. The heavy timber walls contrast beautifully with the delicate frame. The interlocking lap joint securely connects two pieces of trim. By overlapping the cut ends, the joint resists pulling apart under tension. The precision of the saw work is evident in the flush surface. Using a metal square to scribe, a sharp line ensures the thick beam is cut at a perfect 90-degree angle. Accuracy dictates the strength of the final joint. Carrying the delicate wooden frame toward the cabin prepares it for immediate installation. The exterior is nearing completion. Installing the heavy metal latch on the door adds a layer of modern security to the rustic build. Aligning the hasp perfectly ensures the lock engages smoothly. Sawing through a massive log on the ground yields the thick, durable blocks needed for the stairs. Checking the vertical posts with a yellow spirit level guarantees the stair stringers will be perfectly upright. Cutting deep notches into the heavy logs creates stable, flat saddles for the treads. Nailing the floorboards firmly down on the porch edge locks the decking into the underlying joists. Leveling the diagonal support beams under the porch transfers the weight safely into the foundation. The wide stairs offer a gradual, comfortable ascent to the elevated deck. Shaping the base of the stair posts with a hatchet allows them to sit flat on the uneven earth. Fitting the wide wooden treads into the notched stringers creates a massive, unyielding staircase. Positioning the final wide step completes the staircase. The heavy wooden treads are designed to handle years of foot traffic. Hammering long nails through the base of the stringers anchors the entire stair assembly into the supporting posts. The entrance is now permanent and completely stable. Moving inside, the builder hammers the wooden ceiling beams directly into the underside of the heavy roof rafters. This creates a flat grid to hang the ceiling planks. A bird resting quietly nearby shows how quickly nature adapts. Standing on stacked blocks provides the extra reach needed to press the ceiling joists firmly against the high rafters. Nailing the light-colored planks across the overhead beams closes off the high, drafty roof cavity. This dropped ceiling traps warm air down in the living space where it is actually needed. Clearing the wooden blocks and debris from the floor reveals the pristine interior of the finished room. The neat, continuous wooden ceiling completely transforms the cabin. It turns a rustic shelter into a highly finished, comfortable home. Sawing into the massive, rough-hewn log reveals a striking reddish-brown heartwood. This dense, resin-heavy timber is highly resistant to rot, making it perfect for outdoor furniture. Checking the top surface with a spirit level ensures the heavy log will serve as a stable workbench. Holding the axe ready near the split log prepares the timber for rapid shaping. The massive split log serves as a robust base for the work. Placing the small log section carefully onto the supports positions it for milling. Arranging the milled wooden beams on the makeshift table lays out the parts for the outdoor furniture. The tools sit ready for the detailed joinery. Holding a small locking block, the builder checks the fit. Assembling the complex corner joint on the table locks the heavy beams together in a rigid square. The tight geometry ensures the table will not wobble. Fitting the long, horizontal beams onto the upright orange posts establishes the heavy frame of the outdoor table. The dense wood provides immense stability. Driving heavy nails into the overlapping mopping corners locks the massive timber frame permanently together. Securing the crossbeams ensures the table surface won't sag. Using a heavy metal rod to pin the joints adds incredible shear strength to the connections. The metal rod acts as a massive dowel, preventing the wood from slipping. The corner rests solidly on the upright support. Planing the top surface of the heavy beams removes any uneven ridges, creating a perfectly flat tabletop. Connecting the final cross braces to the elevated frame ties the entire structure together. The table is now rigid enough to withstand heavy outdoor use. Shaping a smaller log with the axe removes the waste wood rapidly. The enormous pile of shavings on the ground is a testament to the thousands of deliberate strikes. Carrying a finished piece of timber away from the cabin signals the end of the day's heavy construction. The massive pile of wood shavings surrounds the sawhorse. At night, a warm campfire burns brightly in front of the cabin. The fire provides essential light and heat. Sawing through the thick green bamboo stalks provides a natural, fire-resistant cooking vessel. Walking out of the cabin with the fresh bamboo tubes, the builder prepares to cook a traditional meal. Stuffing large green leaves into the hollow bamboo creates a natural steamer. The moisture inside the fresh bamboo prevents it from burning while perfectly steaming the food trapped inside. Extracting the hot, perfectly cooked food from the charred bamboo reveals the efficiency of this ancient method. The bamboo imparts a subtle, earthy flavor to the meal. Walking past the neatly made bed inside the dimly lit cabin highlights the transition from a rugged build to a comfortable home. The thick wooden walls block out the cold night air. The cleared dirt path winds through the dense forest, leading directly to the finished wooden cabin on the hill. The lush green canopy thrives in the humid climate, providing constant shade and raw materials for the site. Digging a narrow, straight trench alongside the measuring tape prepares the ground for a concrete form. The muddy path shows the heavy foot traffic of the build. Large bags of cement and gravel are staged near the site, ready for the massive concrete pour. The motorcycle provides the vital transport line to the outside world. The dirt path is a vital artery through the forest. Staging the heavy white bags of cement powder near the site minimizes the back-breaking labor of moving them later. Laying out a rectangular perimeter with wooden stakes and string defines the exact footprint of the new patio extension. Opening the heavy bags begins the mixing process. Pouring the dark, angular gravel onto the pile of soil provides the coarse aggregate. Without the stone, the concrete would lack structural shear strength and crack easily under pressure. Pouring water into the depression triggers the hydration process. The dry cement powder and gravel begin to bind together. Vigorously turning the heavy mixture with shovels ensures every stone is fully coated in wet cement paste. A resting dog watches from the dry leaves. Lifting the heavy cement bags requires careful leverage. Walking back toward the cabin, the fresh pile of wet concrete sits ready to be leveled. stacks of dark, pre-cut wooden beams rest nearby, ready to frame the new porch extension. Sawing the vertical wooden post completely flush provides a perfectly level mounting point for the new framework. Chopping the thick wooden beam aggressively with the axe shapes a heavy lintel for the extension. The sawbucks hold the massive timber steady under the heavy blows. Kneeling on the fresh concrete slab, the builder positions the base plates for the wooden frame. The concrete provides an unyielding, rot-proof foundation. Hammering the small wooden block to the main beam creates a custom bracket to support the next joist. Driving a heavy nail into the vertical post anchors the new extension frame directly into the main cabin wall. Shaping the beam with the axe refines the connections. Carrying the long beams onto the concrete slab begins the rapid assembly of the new floor structure. The tight corner joint rests perfectly flat on the concrete. The concrete isolates the wood from ground moisture. The dog watches quietly from the clearing. Working together on the concrete slab, the builders quickly assemble the wooden skeleton of the extension. The vertical posts are locked into the base frame. Standing on the ladder, the builder maneuvers the upper beams into place. Hammering the top joints secures the roof structure of the extension. Using a long handsaw to cross-cut the thick beams, requires smooth, full-length strokes to keep the cut square. The saw teeth clear the sawdust efficiently. Chopping the beam on the sawhorses refines the heavy timber. Hewing the thick beam removes the uneven bark and sapwood. Laying the rough-cut beams out on the ground organizes the materials for the final roofing phase. Measuring the plank ensures an exact cut. Sawing the beam on the sawhorses prepares the roof supports. Cutting the thick, dark log on a stump provides a stable base. The heavy handsaw rips through the dense grain. Using a draw knife on the primitive wooden bench shaves long, thin ribbons of wood. Pulling the blade toward the body allows for incredible control. Holding the chisel and heavy mallet ready, the craftsman prepares to cut intricate mortises. Chiseling out the deep notch removes the waste wood cleanly. The sharp steel blade pares down the walls of the joint. Marking a precise line with a metal ruler and pencil guarantees the next cut will be perfectly straight. Sawing the marked beam on the sawhorses creates the complex joints needed for the framework. Sliding the deeply notched, interlocking beams together creates an incredibly strong, self-locking joint. The wood geometry handles the structural load. sanding the long wooden beam on the sawhorses removes any rough splinters from the handrails. The interior of the cabin remains dry and secure. Dropping the heavy bag of cement near the porch prepares the site for the final masonry touches. Sawing the final pieces of wood on the sawhorse provides the materials for the porch railing. Carrying the bag of materials up to the stairs keeps supplies close at hand. Hammering the nail into the base of the stair support locks the stringer permanently to the deck. Using a yellow spirit level on the vertical post ensures the railing will stand perfectly plumb. Cutting the post to length with a handsaw caps the height of the railing. Carrying the finished railings piece toward the porch signals the final touches on the exterior. Hammering the long nails through the railing secures the wooden barrier around the high porch. Carving the sharp edges of the railing with a knife chamfers the corners, making them smooth to the touch. Standing on the finished porch offers a sweeping view of the forest. Looking up, the canopy completely surrounds the tiny home. Working in the clearing, the builder finishes the final carpentry tasks. Sawing through the thick log on the sawhorse provides a steady supply of evening firewood. Standing in the clearing, the day's labor winds down. Kneeling to gather the freshly cut pieces secures the fuel needed for the night's warmth and cooking. Walking back to the cabin with an armful of wood completes the transition from construction to habitation. Sitting by the small fire, on the finished porch, the builder boils water in a metal pot over glowing coals. The empty metal cooking pot sits ready on the clean floor. Cooking over the open fire illuminates the porch. Stirring the pot over the hot embers extracts every bit of heat from the small fire. Adding a single piece of wood sustains the exact cooking temperature. Chopping the raw meat on the wooden board prepares the protein for the hot wok. Slicing the ginger adds sharp flavor to the simple meal. Tossing the meat into the screaming hot wok sears it instantly over the bright, dancing flames. Stir-frying the bamboo shoots and meat over the open hearth brings the massive project full circle. Transferring the steaming food into a ceramic bowl marks the end of the day's labor. Eating quietly inside the brightly lit cabin highlights the transition from survival to true comfort. Looking out from the safety of the porch, the dark, imposing forest is held safely at bay. What began as a tangled hillside of raw brush is now a permanent, functioning home. The logs were shaped by hand, the foundation anchored deep, and every joint locked into place with deliberate intent. Survival is more than just enduring the wild. It is crafting a space that truly sustains itself.